This is your world with you. Enjoy watching. The nuclear bomb. In most people's minds, it's something amorphous and undefined. On the one hand, it's synonymous with destructive power, but on the other hand, many people cite the example of Hiroshima, where after several decades after the explosion, life is boiling. Don't worry, we are going to clear the air and figure out what would happen if we detonate all the bombs on the planet at once. Are computer game scenarios possible or is the threat of bombs propaganda? We'll find out here and now. Immediately after your comment about whether you're a supporter of nuclear or an opponent of nuclear weapons, because there are a lot of bombs on Earth. Too many. According to an international company to ban nuclear weapons, there are 17,300 pieces of this type of ammunition. By comparison, the number of cities of millions of people the number of cities with millions of people on the planet is barely over 300. According to the Russian census, only 171 cities can boast population over 100,000 people. In the United States, there are about 300 such cities. Some simple math would suggest that the weapons we have are easily enough to wipe entire countries off the face of the planet, regardless of size and population. The owner of the largest stockpile according to the same organization, Russia, there are 8,500 warheads. The United States is just behind with 7,700. The rest can only boast of scraps. France has 300 warheads, China there are 250, and the tea drinkers have 225. Nuclear weapons are in the balance of 9 countries. Some will say that this allows for the balance of power, and some will say it allows for a balance of power, and some will say it's an opponent of nuclear weapons. But apart from the loud statements, there is no one has taken any real action to reduce the arsenal. No one, even though Wikipedia says only old and unneeded bombs are being scrapped. Unnecessary bombs, and the statistics the generals are more than happy to publish the generals will be more than happy to publish reports that are convenient for them. We should only trust is the independent organizations whose figures we are given here. Speaking of arsenals, bombs come in different tonnages, delivery methods, method of delivery, type of impact, and lethal and killing power. In a nutshell, there's ammunition for all occasions. Submarines, planes, cannons, missiles. The military uses them all. The killing power is also limited to the specific target. At one time, scientists thought that bombs were weak, kill people who weren't hit. It takes time for the radiation to take effect. Time, which doesn't really matter on the battlefield. So it didn't take long for them to invent neutron bombs, capable of hitting people with radiation 13 times more lethal. Isn't that nice? Let's not get into the classification of this garbage, and get to the facts. Let's go back to 1945 and remember the first use of a terrifying weapon in combat under combat conditions. Or rather, not in combat, because the Americans easily dropped 2 warheads on ordinary cities. The pretext was that Hiroshima was based a military port and Nagasaki was a weapons factory, weapons production plants. And the fact is that the guys wanted to achieve the maximum psychological effect, and they were counting on that the geography of the cities was going to amplify the effects of the explosion. 500,000 ordinary people in the 2 cities in the US were forgotten. For those who cite the example of photos of modern technological Hiroshima and Nagasaki as an example, it is not the weakness of the bomb, but the genius and character of the Japanese, from building everything from a level even below the ruins. In fact, they are completely new cities which have kept only the name. Instead of 1,000 words, the photos of the area before and after the explosion. The cities turned into dust, and so did every single person within a radius of 1 kilometer of the blast. Remember, we mentioned almost 500,000 people before the bombing? According to the official figures alone, half of them died, and most of those who remained suffered the rest of their lives from radiation sickness. Look it up, and you'll see that everyone was a victim. And for a second, the killing power of those bombs is a far cry from of today's bombs. And today's bombs are almost 3,000 times stronger. The King bomb listed in the Guinness Book of World Records. It lifted a mushroom to an altitude of 67 kilometers from the ground, almost out of space. The fireball reached a diameter of 4,600 meters. It's a fifth of St. Petersburg, and we are only talking about the fireball. The bomb's light radiation could cause third-degree burns at a distance of 100 kilometers away, and witnesses could feel the impact 1,000 kilometers away from the blast. Just estimate the radius of the continuous blast zone of such a bomb, applied, for example, to Paris. is not a figure of speech. It's implied that there would be nothing left alive at all. Of course not all modern bombs are so as powerful, but there are 1,500 of them. It's time to cut to the chase. What if all of them were detonated? The trouble is, there's a lot of politics involved. That's why on the internet, there's an opinion that, at the same time, that to go back to the Middle Ages you need hundreds of missiles and that even blowing up 50,000 won't do any harm. The proponents of the gun are spreading they're the safe version. The opponents the opposite. So who's right? Common sense and dry statistics on the illnesses of people living next to nuclear weapons test sites. Nuclear weapons testing sites. And then there's trivial math, and 5,000 cities of land with a population of over 100,000 people is less than 3% of the available stockpile of weapons, even without the damage to the environment. At least half of the world's population of the planet. You want to be specific? Yes please. Even if you believe the official statistics, the average yield of a warhead is somewhere around 200 kilotons. One of the most destructive disasters in human history was the volcanic eruption Krakatoa, had the potential 200 megatons. Multiplying our 200 kilotons by the 15,000 to 20,000 warheads we have, you get 15 to 20 times the energy. For a second, a volcano is relatively away from densely populated areas, split the hell out of an island, triggered a 36 meter tsunami, and the shockwave circled the globe several times. Not only that, the volcano threw out so much ash that the effects in the atmosphere were visible all over the earth for several years. For a second, the effects of the bombs are even more devastating. According to studies have shown that even 100 warheads can destroy half of the ozone layer in the area of application. Multiply that figure by 15 and you get a huge increase in cancer rates around the world. Also change in temperature, because nuclear winter is not a myth in the propagandists, it's really going to happen. And a seemingly insignificant reduction in the average temperature of the planet by 5 to 6 degrees would throw us back into the Middle Ages and a terrible starvation. But humans are no less resilient than cockroaches. The planet won't fall out of orbit but unfortunately the closest thing to predicting the consequences of a large-scale nuclear war, half of the world's population would be wiped out, and the other half would suffer of cancer, and searching for food, and find food, that will be catastrophically lacking. Imagine this fatal damage to infrastructure, technology and manufacturing, and you get stalker across much of the planet. The sad conclusion of the story is that video. Google the phrase, how many nuclear weapons? The most popular queries will refer to specific countries, not the world as a whole. Millennia of progress, wars of blood have not taught people anything. We also draw borders between countries, and willing to kill people, just because they are not born near us. A simple farmer from Indonesia have more in common with you than the person who was born in the next bed in the maternity ward, until mankind realizes that we are much closer than politicians say we are. This is not going to change. All we have to do is to estimate the scale of an apocalypse that has nothing to do with external factors. Instead of progress, we have to build up our clubs and look at each other angrily. The only problem is that there's no adequate answer to the question of why.
Я хочу еще раз все-таки подчеркнуть это. Я говорил, но мне очень бы хотелось, чтобы вы меня услышали все-таки в конце концов. И донесли это до своих читателей, зрителей и пользователей в интернете. Но вы понимаете или нет, что если Украина будет в НАТО и военным путем будет возвращать себе Крым, европейские страны автоматически будут втянуты в военный конфликт с Россией. Конечно, потенциал объединенной организации НАТО и России несопоставим. Мы понимаем. Но мы также и понимаем, что Россия одна из ведущих ядерных держав. А по некоторым компонентам по современности даже многих опережает. Победителей не будет. И вы окажетесь втянутыми в этот конфликт помимо своей воли. Вы даже не успеете глазом моргнуть, когда будете исполнять пункт 5 Римского договора. Господин президент, конечно, не хочет этого развития. И я не хочу. Поэтому он здесь и находится, и мучает меня уже 6 часов подряд.